Grant Robertson.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I was expecting some of the people on the other side of the House who've been interjecting freely through the process that they may choose to take a call on the third reading, but clearly it's only the interjections that are required. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak about 3 or 4 elements of the bill in this third reading. The Labour Party is supporting the bill, and it's the half glass full rather than half empty side of the Speaker who's just resumed his seat. There are some elements in this bill that are positive. Moving from a paper-based system to an electronic system is overdue for the student loan scheme, and I've got no doubt that the changes being made here in terms of that will assist borrowers. They'll be able to interact with IRD far better. They'll know much more about the balance of their loan. We hope, we're assured, that compliance costs will be reduced as a result of this. The quality of information will increase, and many constituency MPs will have been approached over the years by borrowers concerned about aspects of how the loan scheme operates. And it's certainly myself as a borrower experienced this, and I've also had people come and see me about it where overpayments occur, information is not flowing between IRD and what is now called StudyLink, and people will actually under this process be able to have much more control over their own loan accounts, and I think that is a very good thing. There's some practical steps in the bill that tidy up 1 or 2 elements around overpayments and the interest rates and so on, and they, I believe, are good things, and that is why we are prepared to support this bill. There are also some changes around obligations on borrowers who are overseas, and I do support that. I've had my concerns over the years, Mr. Speaker, about the loan scheme. I support a lot of what the Green member said about the costs that have been imposed on people who have undertaken tertiary education. But once someone has borrowed from the scheme, I do believe that they should meet their obligations, and that means when they are overseas that payments are made in accordance with the law that we are amending today. And so I do support the changes around obligations within the law. Where I believe that the problems that exist in this bill, which is about to become law, still for me is around the question of the pay period versus an annual assessment for repayment. I appreciate the changes that were made in the Select Committee on this matter, and I think they do go some way to mitigating the concerns. And I'm not sure in the last Green Speaker that he completely covered off the change that the committee has made, because the Select Committee took on board the concerns that were raised in first reading speeches and by submitters about the impact of a pay period assessment on someone's earnings versus an annual assessment if that person was a student or was to continue to be a student. And this is because what a lot of students try to do is work very, very hard over breaks so that they don't have to either borrow extra money while they're studying or undertake more part-time work during a study period. And so the changes that were made by the Select Committee acknowledge that and ensure that there will be a wider group of students in this case, and who are also borrowers, who will be exempt from those repayment changes. However, that is still on application. That is still on the application of the student to go and get an exemption from the Commissioner of Inland Revenue. And I would urge the government to work with student associations, so long as they still exist, and make sure that students and borrowers are aware of the fact that they can get this exemption. Because it may be that some of them will not be aware of that. They will work very hard in part-time jobs in breaks and not know that they, under this law, are now eligible to be exempt from having to make repayments. And so I think it's a good thing that the Select Committee have done by making this change and acknowledging that a student in a holiday break who is under the current rules, if they earned more than $367 a week in that holiday break, would have had to make repayments. That now won't occur, but only on application, and I really would urge the government to ensure that students and borrowers are aware of that change. Having supported that particular aspect of the change, it is still true that part-time students and also those people with irregular incomes will now potentially be caught by the pay period assessment. And members on the other side of the House enjoy talking about movies like The Hobbit And it is true that people who work perhaps in that kind of film industry, who work and get large amounts of money at a particular time, but perhaps won't earn over the threshold for a whole year, will be making payments now on the basis of a pay period assessment. That is, I think, does present a difficulty, but I do want to congratulate the Select Committee on having listened to those submissions. It's why bills need to go to Select Committees, Mr Speaker, is so that actually issues like this can be dealt with. But I do still foresee that there will be some issues around moving from an annual assessment to a pay period assessment. I appreciate the fact that for some people there will actually be benefits, but there will still be a number of students who need to apply for an exemption and other borrowers who will not be able to apply for that exemption who will be caught by this change. Mr Speaker, the other matter I want to refer to is one that's been referred to a number of times in the debate, and that's the question of the new $40 administration fee that's been introduced under this bill. We on this side of the House are not convinced that there has been a justification for this fee. We have been told by both the Minister, also within the regulatory impact statement, that the cost savings from the earlier part of the scheme are such that we should be able to in fact see a reduction potentially in any administration costs around the scheme, that the new computer system is going to save money in the long term. And so therefore the introduction of the $40 fee seems to have no basis other than revenue generation, and is in fact, as other colleagues have said in the debate, the reintroduction of interest on student loans by stealth. We know that the national government would rather have interest on student loans. There's no doubt about that. I'm sure if they are elected to a future term, that will be something that they will look at bringing in. And it's because politically they know they can't do anything about it right now, but in reality that's what they want to do. And Stephen Joyce has pushed his officials to find ways of limiting access to the student loan scheme, because he can't do the thing he really wants to do, which is to put the interest back on the student loan scheme. The thing that John Key said he was going to oppose interest-free loans with every bone in his body. That's where the national government really is on student loans, and that's what we see in this bill by the bringing in of this administration fee. It is a $40 fee. Some members on the other side of the House said that we shouldn't worry about a fee that's only $40 a year. That's money that still has to be paid back. That's money that students, up until this bill passes today, weren't going to have to pay. And while we are supporting this bill because of the positive things it does about the management of the student loan scheme, which we do think in the end, we hope, will reduce costs on borrowers, yet with this clause, the costs on borrowers increase. And so it's very disappointing, Mr Speaker, to see the $40 fee in here. We do believe it is interest by stealth. But Mr Speaker, overall this bill does positive things. And when the Select Committee made the change that they made around the pay period versus annual assessment question for repayments, that certainly swayed some of the Labour Party, my Labour Party colleagues, to saying we should support this bill because overall it does some good. But it has still within it problems around that, and particularly the problem with the fee. Mr Speaker, I just want to finish my contribution in this debate to talk in the last minute or so remaining to me about tertiary education, which is the core of why we have a student loan scheme. And I've heard in this debate members in the government benches talk about how we shouldn't be investing as much money in tertiary education as we do. Well, the truth is we need to, Mr Speaker. There, to me, is nothing more important in people being able to achieve their potential than education. And for New Zealand to achieve its potential, we need more people in tertiary education, more people researching, more people coming up with the ideas that are going to drive a productive economy. We will only do that if we invest in tertiary education and we see it as a public good, because it is a public good. We all benefit from a more qualified, educated population. We benefit in terms of the services that we get, we benefit in terms of the social inclusion for people who get into education, and we benefit because of the great new ideas that those people have. We must invest in tertiary education for the good of our country, and we cannot afford to have governments that take money out of tertiary education, because that will limit all of our futures. Mr Speaker, I believe that investment in tertiary education is one of the most important things that a government can do, and we must continue to invest in our future.
Mr Speaker. David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.